All right, Packers mandatory minicamp is underway, and the Packers have a problem they didn't see coming. We're going to address that in this video. First, if you haven't hit that subscribe button, please take a second to do so. Before we get into the problematic issue forming in Green Bay, possible problematic problem forming in Green Bay, I want to hit a couple of highlights in yesterday's mandatory minicamp, starting with Lukas Van Ness. Lukas Van Ness is a player that the Packers absolutely need to step up in a major way, especially with the absence of Micah Parsons. Parsons projected to potentially be out to week 7, week 8. He's not. He's already said he's not. He's not looking to rush back, which I'm grateful for, because that's a player that you've invested a lot of money into, to go out there and create some plays. He's absolutely capable of doing so, but he needs to stay healthy for that. And in the meantime, Lukas Van Ness, former first round pick for the Green Bay Packers, he needs to step up in a major way, and he's off to a very good start. I know it's just mandatory mini camps, all of that, but needless to say, he's looking quite good. He got into the backfield, creating pressure on Jordan Love a couple of times. He would have had 2 sacks, one of them being a forced fumble. He got out of the backfield, disrupted the run game, and Josh Jacobs, he looked good. He looked absolutely the part that you want him to look early on in minicamp. That is a sight for sore eyes, because Van Ness had a very good start to last year before his injuries. So this is a player that the Packers absolutely need to step up. Okay, so another player is, a player which the Packers drafted this year. They spent 2 7th-round picks to trade up into the 6th round to go and get kicker Trey Smack. Smack had a rough week last week, and he bounced back. This is a player that was able to bounce back yesterday, making 7 of 8 attempts out there, one of them being a 51 and a 58 yarder to end the drill. That is good news, because we know that the Packers have had some deficiencies on special teams. Bisaccia is out. We get a new kicker. Not that Brandon McManus was a bad kicker by any means, because he was pretty much money his first year in Green Bay. And then he had those injury issues, which then he just couldn't seem to get that confidence and couldn't seem to get right, which now the Packers have moved on from that, and they've made Smack their guy. I'm really hoping he steps up to the plate. I'm confident that he will. Okay, so what's the problem forming in Green Bay, or potential problem forming in Green Bay? And it happens to center around a very needy area, and I'm sure he's using that as leverage, meaning Keisean Nixon, when it comes to him showing up for training camp. There is a Packer insider that says he's very skeptical that the Pro Bowler is going to maybe return to training camp, because obviously, he's expecting a pay raise. He's obviously not getting paid like a number one corner, which, man, when you talk Keisean Nixon and you mention that he could potentially be, or he is the number one cornerback slotted right now for Green Bay, I've said all along, this dude is not a starting caliber cornerback in the league. He's a good depth piece to bring off the bench. That is it. Keisean Nixon that's it. So he was a problematic issue for the Packers defense last year, in that he created tons of penalties, which then it seemed like the Packers were coming up with some big 3rd down stops, and then he would do some stupid stuff. He was the most penalized Packer, both offensively and defensively last year. You can't have a guy out there like that, that's just going to stall drives. When you come up with stops, and then he gives them some gifts based on his stupidity out there with his penalties. And some of them were personal fouls after the fact, jumping on a pile, if you remember last year. But man, he was absolutely problematic. Now, the PFF score doesn't really reflect that. He had an overall PFF score of a 66.4 on over 1,000 snap counts, which means he was reliable out there. He was staying healthy, which is a big need for the Packers when it comes to health. He had 1 pick, 13 breakups. So overall, he didn't have that bad of a year. But when you look at what this dude did last year and the penalties that he racked up, that was problematic for the Green Bay Packers. Okay, so here's the thing. Leave your comments. I want to know what your thoughts are on Keisean Nixon. I'm not a fan, but if the Packers and Keisean Nixon can't come to terms, I certainly wouldn't extend his contract out by any means. which then leaves, okay, so who's the next best corner out there? It's absolutely Rasul Douglas. He's obviously being sought after by many teams out there. He had an overall PFF score of a 72.7, two interceptions, nine pass breakups. What is he going to command out there? And this is a player that I'm sure would like to come back. I'm not saying love to come back to Green Bay, but I'm sure he would like to come back to Green Bay, a familiar scene in Lambeau Field for Rasul Douglas to come back there. It would take about anywhere from $4 to $8 million on a one-year deal to get Rasul Douglas back. And if it's me and Keisean Nixon starts holding out, I would absolutely pursue, or even if I would take him off to the side and say, "Hey, dude, we're hearing rumors that you're going to be holding out. Is that the case?" And if that's the case, I absolutely would move on from Keisean Nixon and get Rasul Douglas in house. Cisse, Rasul on either side would be problematic for most offenses out there. But man, this is disappointing news. I didn't really see this one coming, because if I were Keisean Nixon, I would be thanking my lucky stars that I'm on a team, and let alone I have a big role on a team, and I'm still making a good amount of money. I think he's due $7 million this year, which is the final year of his 3-year, $18 million extension that he got from the Packers. But leave your comments on this. Are you as shocked as I am? I didn't see this coming, really. But I guess it makes sense when you look at the area of need at corner for the Packers. Rasul Douglas I'm sorry, not Rasul Douglas, but Keisean Nixon is probably using that as leverage. But leave your comments on that. And as always, go Pack Go.